In the cold corridors of the Red Keep, whispers moved faster than ravens. After King Robert's death, the city turned darker, more dangerous. Ned Stark stood tall, his jaw clenched as he watched Joffrey sit on the Iron Throne like a child playing with swords. But Ned wasn't a fool. He knew the boy wasn't Robert's son, and worse. He saw how Cersei and her cruel ambitions were already poisoning the court. Originally, Ned had planned to reveal the truth, Joffrey's illegitimacy. Install Stannis Baratheon as king, following the law. But betrayal had come swiftly. His own men had turned, and Littlefinger's dagger was proof that loyalty was just a word in King's Landing. Imprisoned in the dungeons below, bruised and bloodied, Ned waited for death. That's when a message came, not from Robb, not from Varys, but from an unlikely source. Tywin Lannister. The paper was short and cold. We both care for legacy. Meet me in the dark, or let your name be forgotten. At first, Ned thought it a trick. Tywin Lannister, the Lion of Casterly Rock, was the last man he'd ever expect to offer help. But Ned had nothing left to lose, and everything to save, especially his daughters. That night, under the veil of silence, he was led to a hidden chamber. There, Tywin stood in black and crimson, staring at a map of Westeros. His face was stern, but his voice calm. "You and I," Tywin began, "are men of reason. My grandson is a mad dog, worse than his father. He's not fit to rule, and you, Stark, are the only man with enough honor to help remove him." Without burning the realm, Ned narrowed his eyes. "Why not just crown your own son, Jaime, or even your daughter?" Tywin didn't blink. "My son is a kingslayer, and my daughter, well, you've seen what she's made of. No, we need a king. Westeros will obey, and a hand the realm can trust." The idea chilled Ned to the bone, but the logic was hard to ignore. Tywin proposed an alliance. Remove Joffrey through calculated political pressure, not war, and then crown Tommen still. A Lannister, but malleable, innocent. Cersei would be sidelined. Sansa and Arya returned. Robb's war could be avoided. Stannis sent to Dragonstone with a generous title. It was treason. But it was peace, Ned agreed, reluctantly. Their plan moved fast. Varys was convinced with whispers. Of stability, Littlefinger, ever the opportunist, saw a better deal with Tywin in control and changed sides. The Gold Cloaks were bribed properly this time. Even Renly, sensing a wind shift, pledged neutrality. Then came the performance. During a royal feast, Joffrey publicly humiliated Sansa again. But this time, Tywin stood. "The boy is not fit to rule," he said loudly. Gasps filled the hall. Joffrey laughed. "You forget yourself, grandfather." But the guards had already turned. With a silent nod from Ned, they approached the throne. Cersei shrieked. Joffrey reached for his sword, but Seer Barristan Selmy stepped forward. "I swore to serve the realm, not a mad child." That night, Joffrey was locked away. Cersei, foaming with rage, was placed under house arrest in Maegor's Holdfast. Tommen was declared king with Ned as his hand. The city held its breath. Ravens flew in Winterfell. Robb paused his march. In Dragonstone, Stannis broke his cup in fury. But the realm, tired of war, watched as something strange happened. Returned.tywin, and Ned sat across from each other again. The tension between them never vanished. But there was something both men understood. Westeros needed peace more than vengeance. Still, the lion never sleeps, and the wolf never forgets. This uneasy alliance had just begun, and blood was still in the air. The days that followed Joffrey's imprisonment were calm on the surface, but chaos rippled underneath. Whispers echoed through taverns and noble halls alike about the boy king's downfall, about Ned Stark working with Tywin Lannister, about how quickly loyalties shifted in King's Landing. Some called it a bloodless coup, others called it treason disguised as wisdom. Inside the Red Keep, Ned moved with care. His presence as Hand of the King was accepted, even respected, but not loved. The Lannisters were watching, and so were the small folk, unsure what to make of a Stark who wore the pin of the crown yet sat beside their old enemies. Tommen was a gentle boy, scared but eager to please. Ned guided him like he would his own son, teaching him justice, mercy, and the heavy weight of a crown. Tywin, however, remained a looming shadow firm in the council, strict in his expectations. They agreed in public, disagreed in private. Your softness will break him, Tywin told Ned one morning, and your cruelty will ruin him. Ned replied coldly. Cersei remained locked away. She was allowed visitors, but only under guard. Her fury had not dimmed. She refused food some days. Other times, she screamed at betrayal and called Ned a usurper. Sansa visited her once and returned pale-faced, refusing to speak of it. Arya, however, had not yet been found. Ned had Varys search every corner of the city. He feared the worst, though his heart refused to believe she was gone. Then news came from the north. Robb Stark had halted his march, confused by the sudden change in power. His bannermen urged him to continue south and take vengeance for his father's arrest. But Robb waited, and Ned sent a raven, explaining everything: his alliance with Tywin, the removal of Joffrey, the peace that might finally be possible. It was not the answer Robb wanted, but it was the truth. He began to consider turning back, though many lords saw it as weakness. Meanwhile, in Dragonstone, Stannis Baratheon burned with anger. He refused to acknowledge Tommen as king, claiming the throne was his by right. Melisandre, his Red Priestess, whispered of fire and destiny. Only one king is chosen by the Lord of Light, she said, and he wears a crown of smoke and shadow. Stannis began gathering ships. In King's Landing, Tywin moved swiftly. He brought in Lannister gold to stabilize the economy, bribed merchants, and silenced dissent. Ned, in turn, began rooting out corruption in the city watch and courts. Together, they brought order, but their methods clashed. One evening, as Ned looked over a report of executions Tywin had authorized without consulting him, he finally snapped. "We agreed to rule together," he said, "not as your puppet." Tywin didn't look up. "We agreed to protect the realm. That means making hard choices." "Hard choices," Ned growled. "You hanged 3 bakers for hoarding grain. They were starving the people. They were trying to feed their families." Tywin stood. His cold eyes met Ned's. "If you think you can run this city on honor alone, then you've already lost it." The room fell silent. For the first time since their alliance, both men saw the crack forming. It wasn't just a difference of rule, it was a difference of soul. Still, the realm was quiet, and for now that was enough. But then a raven arrived. It bore the seal of House Targaryen across the sea in the city of Karth. Daenerys Targaryen had declared her intent to reclaim the Iron Throne. She had dragons now, and she had ships. Ned held the letter in trembling hands. Tywin read it with narrowed eyes. "The last dragon returns," he murmured. "This game isn't over." And just like that, the winds began to shift again. Peace had a short memory in West. Winter had begun to kiss the edges of the north with its sharp breath. Robb Stark, camped at Moat Cailin, held his father's raven in one hand and a map in the other. His bannermen grumbled, questioning why they were retreating when vengeance was close. But Robb, with the burden of a king but none of the title, made his decision. "We return to Winterfell," he said firmly. "My father's alive. My sisters are safe. The war is over for now." Some lords left his side, believing him too soft. Others remained loyal, understanding that a dead army couldn't protect the north. As Robb turned homeward, he couldn't help but wonder if the quiet would last in King's Landing. Ned and Tywin stood before the small council as Maester Pycelle read aloud Daenerys Targaryen's letter. It was written in Valyrian, then translated with trembling hands. "I am Daenerys Stormborn of House Targaryen, mother of dragons. I come not to beg, but to take what is mine." The room buzzed with unease. Littlefinger smirked, as always, amused by danger. Varys looked thoughtful. Ned remained silent. Tywin, however, responded first. "She has dragons. That makes her a threat. They're still small," Varys said gently. "Barely larger than hounds, I hear." Ned didn't trust Varys, but he knew the man wasn't lying. "Still, we can't ignore her," Tywin nodded. "No, but we won't move hastily. Let her come closer. We'll prepare the coast, strengthen the navy, and monitor her progress." But even as they spoke of planning, cracks were forming within. Cersei had not accepted her fate. From within Maegor's holdfast, she began reaching out to old Elise quietly, through bribes and threats. Some guards were still loyal to her. Some gold cloaks remembered her as queen. And above all, she still had influence over the Tyrells. Marguerite Tyrell arrived in the capital under the pretense of visiting Tommen. Her beauty and grace enchanted the court. Even Tommen looked happier, smiling shyly at her. But Ned knew better. He had seen enough of court games. Late one evening, Sansa came to him, her hands shaking. "Father," she whispered, "I overheard Queen Cersei talking to Lady Margaery. She said Joffrey will return." Ned's heart froze. "But he's imprisoned," he said slowly. "There's no way she has men," Sansa said. "She said they were still hers. She called them her shadows in gold, the gold cloaks." Ned rushed to Tywin's chambers without hesitation. "We must move her, immediately. She's plotting." Tywin didn't seem surprised. "I expected as much. Let her try." "You underestimate her," Ned snapped. "She'll destroy everything." Tywin finally looked at him, his expression unreadable. "No, Lord Stark. I don't underestimate her. I just want her to make the first mistake. Then I'll make sure it's her last." But Cersei wasn't waiting for mistakes. That same night, a riot broke out near the dragon pit. Fires blazed. Gold cloaks were missing from their posts. By dawn, the gates of the city were in chaos, and from the black cells, Joffrey was gone. Ned stormed through the halls, every step heavy with dread. How, he barked at the guards. How did he escape? No one had answers, but Tywin knew. His face was pale with anger, but his voice was calm. Cersei has made her move. Outside the walls of King's Landing, a small force began to form mercenaries, ex-soldiers, disgraced knights. At its center, riding with wild eyes and a cruel grin, was Joffrey Baratheon, wearing his crown once more. He wasn't just returning, he was declaring war on his own city. The city of King's Landing had seen its share of war, but never had it. braced for one lead by a boy it had once called king. As news of Joffrey's escape spread, panic gripped the people. Some wept, others cheered, and many feared what a returning tyrant might bring. The Goldcloaks, unsure of their loyalties, began deserting in secret. Old debts to the Lannisters whispered louder than their vows. Ned stood at the gates of the Red Keep, watching black smoke rise near Flea Bottom. His hand gripped the hilt of ice, though he had no use for it yet. Tywin stood beside him, arms behind his back, eyes calculating. "He's rallying the worst of the worst," Ned muttered. "Traitors, thugs, criminals." Tywin nodded. "And some of them are very well paid." They moved quickly. Loyal guards were placed at key positions: Blackwater Bay, the gates, the towers. Varys deployed his little birds across the city. Sansa was moved to a safe chamber. Still, the tension in the air was like a drawn bowstring. 2 nights later, Joffrey made his presence known at the Great Sept of Baelor. In the dead of night, the statue of the Seven was burned to the ground. On its remains, Joffrey's men hung. A banner, a crowned lion tearing apart a direwolf and a stag. The message was clear. The next morning, a raven arrived at the Red Keep. It bore no seal, only words scribbled in haste. "I am King Joffrey, rightful heir. I have been betrayed by my own blood. The usurpers, Tywin, Lannister, and Eddard Stark, will answer for their crimes. I demand their heads within 3 days, or I shall take the city by fire and steel." Ned read the message in silence. Tywin burned it in the hearth. "He's bluffing," Tywin said. "He's not," Ned replied grimly. "He's mad." Within the city walls, fear bloomed like rot. People began fleeing. Shops closed. The smell of rebellion lingered. Tyrion, now returned from the Vale, stood before his father and Ned. "If I may," Tyrion said, sipping wine, "this would be a splendid time to kill the boy before he becomes a plague." "How do you propose we do that?" Ned asked. "Simple. Let me go out and parley. Get close enough, and I'll slit his throat myself." Tywin considered it, but Ned shook his head. "No. He wants blood. He'll kill any messenger." So they prepared for war. Barricades were raised. Archers positioned on rooftops. The wildfire stocks were counted and guarded. Tommen, now just a scared boy, asked Ned, "Will he hurt us?" Ned knelt beside him. "Not if I can help it." Then, on the 3rd night, under the light of a pale moon, Joffrey attacked. It wasn't a siege, it was chaos. His mercenaries poured. Through the city's eastern gate, helped by traitor Goldcloaks who opened the way, fires broke out along the slums. Screams filled the streets. The battle had begun. Ned led from the front, sword in hand, face grim. He fought not for glory, but for survival. Tywin coordinated the defenses with brutal efficiency, turning alleyways into traps and rooftops into death zones. Tyrion, to everyone's shock, took to the walls with a crossbow, shouting obscenities at the attackers as he fired bolt after bolt in the middle of the madness. Joffrey strode into the city on horseback, laughing, swinging a blade too large for him. He was drunk on power, oblivious to danger. But fate was watching. As he turned a corner near the Sept, a cloaked figure stepped out. It was Arya. She had been in hiding all this time, moving through the city's shadows, learning its secret paths. Now, she stood before the boy who had ordered her father's death. Joffrey didn't even recognize her. "Out of my way, girl," he snapped. She said nothing. Then, quick as lightning, she plunged needle into his thigh. He screamed, fell, Before his guards could reach her, she vanished into the shadows. It wasn't the killing blow, but it was the beginning of Joffrey's fall. Joffrey's scream echoed through the burning streets like a wounded animal. His guards pulled him to safety, blood seeping through his leg. Rage boiled in his eyes, not just from pain but humiliation. "Find her," he shrieked. "Find that Stark girl and bring me her head." But the streets of King's Landing were no longer his. The people, tired of cruelty, had begun to fight back. Small folk, armed with nothing but kitchen knives and rocks, rose against his men. Joffrey's golden armor made him a target. The city he once ruled through fear now turned on him with fire. Inside the Red Keep, Ned stood over the ramparts, watching the chaos below. He could see flames licking the edges of the flea bottom. He turned to Tywin. "We need to end this now, before the whole city falls." Tywin gave a grim nod. "We end it tonight." Their forces rallied at the center of the city. Barristan Selmy led the charge down the main street, cutting through mercenaries with terrifying precision. Behind him, loyal guards pushed forward, reclaiming ground block by block. Arya, meanwhile, moved like a ghost. She slipped through alleyways, avoiding the worst of the fighting, but always drifting closer to the heart of it. Her heart beat with a strange calm. She had wounded Joffrey. It wasn't enough. Not yet. In the Tower of the Hand, Sansa waited in silence, praying that her father would return. Tommen sat beside her, hands shaking. "Why is my brother doing this?" he asked. "Because no one ever told him no," Sansa whispered. As dawn began to break, the final clash erupted near the Great Sept. Joffrey, though wounded, had insisted on leading what remained of his forces. His sword arm trembled, and his crown sat askew. But he screamed orders like a king. That's when he saw them, Ned Stark and Tywin Lannister, riding side by side down the wide street. Their banners united. Joffrey charged, fury in his eyes. Traitors. Usurpers. He swung at Tywin first. The blow was weak, untrained, and easily blocked. Tywin knocked the sword from his hand and looked down at the boy he once called grandson. "You were never fit to rule." Before he could strike, Ned stepped forward. "No," he said quietly. "This ends with justice, not vengeance." He grabbed Joffrey by the collar and threw him to the ground. The boy wailed, bleeding and broken, but alive. Ned turned to the soldiers. "Take him to the dungeons. He will stand trial for everything." There was no cheer, no joy, just the sound of swords falling to the ground as the last of Joffrey's men surrendered by midday. The fires had been extinguished. The city bled, but it had survived inside. The throne room, Tywin stood beside the Iron Throne, unmoved. Tommen sat upon it, his feet barely touching the ground, with Ned standing by his hand once more. Cersei was brought before them, chained and furious. Her eyes locked on Joffrey, now bruised and shackled. "You monsters," she hissed. "He is your blood." "He's a murderer," Ned replied coldly. Tywin simply turned his back. Joffrey's trial began a week later. Witnesses came forward, peasants, nobles, even former guards, each with stories of cruelty, of executions ordered for sport, of innocence trampled under the weight of a golden crown. The verdict was never in doubt, but the sentence was debated long into the night. Death. Tywin said flatly. Exile, Ned argued. Let him live with his shame across the sea. Shame won't stop him, Tywin replied. He'll return. In the end, it was Tommen who decided. He's my brother, he said, voice trembling. But he's hurt too many people. If he stays alive, more will suffer. I want peace." The next morning, Joffrey was taken to the courtyard. Arya stood in the shadows, watching. He looked up, sneering through his chains. "I'll come back, you'll see." But he never got the chance. The executioner's sword fell swift and clean. The city was silent. The shadow of Joffrey's death lingered over King's Landing like a cold mist. Though many called it justice, others whispered of betrayal and blood. The boy king was gone, but his cruelty had scarred the realm. Ned Stark stood by the window of the Tower of the Hand, watching the sunrise creep over Blackwater Bay. Peace had been won, but at a price that could never be undone. The city began to heal slowly. The markets reopened. The bells tolled for those lost in the fighting, and families mourned quietly. Tommen, now wearing the crown with nervous dignity, listened closely to every word spoken in council. Under Ned's guidance, he learned not to command, but to ask. Tywin remained by his side, a ghost of power less visible now, but no less dangerous. Cersei, broken by the fall of both her son and her plans, had been exiled to Casterly Rock. She left under heavy guard, spitting curses until the gates swallowed her. Tywin didn't watch her go. He simply signed the order and never spoke of her again. Arya vanished once more. Ned searched, sent ravens, asked Varys, but she was gone. Some said she boarded a ship bound for Braavos. Others claimed she lived among the faceless people in the slums. Ned held on to hope, but knew better. His daughter had changed. She had walked too close to death and learned to speak its language. Sansa remained in the capital, now a lady of poise and quiet strength. She helped Tommen understand the people, sat in on council meetings, and grew into a voice of reason. Ned often looked at her with both pride and sorrow. She had lost too much to ever be a child again. Robb returned to Winterfell, not as a king, but as a son. He ruled the north with quiet honor, watching the south from afar. The war had taken friends, brothers, and part of his heart, but he endured, as Starks always did. Across the narrow sea, word of Joffrey's death reached Daenerys Targaryen. She listened without emotion, staring into the flames as her dragons curled around her feet. "A false king has fallen," she murmured, "but the throne is still not mine." Her ships continued to gather. Back in King's Landing, Ned and Tywin shared fewer meetings. Their alliance had served its purpose. Now, their differences simmered just beneath the surface. "You've won peace," Tywin said one afternoon, "but it won't last." "Nothing does," Ned replied, "but we can build something worth defending." Tywin gave a small, rare smile. "You're too honest for this city, and you're too ruthless for peace." Ned returned. They parted without shaking hands. As seasons shifted and winter crept closer, King's Landing stood forn under a banner of fragile unity. The Iron Throne, though colder than ever, no longer burned with the madness of a boy. Ned often walked the halls at night, haunted by what might have been. If he had died in the dungeons, if Joffrey had remained king, if Arya had never returned, ... But he was alive, and Westeros, though wounded, breathed still in the godswood of the Red Keep, under the silent face of an old weirwood tree transplanted. From the north, Ned Stark knelt, closed his eyes, and whispered a prayer, not for himself, but for the future, one without fire or blood, one his children might finally live to see.